Hello, college football fans. It is Thursday, September the 30th, 2021. That's right, last day of September, coming in hot on October. Well, I keep hearing terms like wide open when I hear national talking heads describe the college football playoff landscape right now, and I'll agree that the fourth slot seems wide open, but the first three seem pretty solid to me right now. I mean, as solid as your top three slots can be going into week 5 of the season. But certainly the number 4 slot, wide open. We've still got a lot of undefeated teams, and at this point, if you're an undefeated team in a Power 5 conference, you're definitely in the thick of the hunt right now. How realistic or not that hunt is will be determined by, the rest of the season, like it always is. One of the reasons why it's the greatest regular season in all of sports. And we're going to hope to keep it that way, but I'm sure they'll figure out a way to destroy everything we love. They do it slowly but surely if you're a college football fan. And, one of the things that they've done is legislate great defense out of the game. And they're almost there, I believe. Just a couple more tweaks, and we won't even have defensive players anymore. That'll just be an open field for offenses to go run up and down on, because apparently the TV people think that's what people want to see. Well, I'm going to get off of my soapbox right now and move on, because we got week 5 coming up, and I'm so excited. It's a blockbuster weekend, big time, big plays, big games, big players, big coaches everywhere, and there's a lot at stake this week coming up, and we're just going to get right into it. I'm going to start obviously with the big one, Alabama and Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming into Tuscaloosa. Everybody's a little bit tense about this one, as well they should be, because last year was just a complete meltdown, it seemed, on the defense until, they went ahead and showed that they're definitely capable of winning a national championship. Not only winning a national championship, but having arguably the most dominant season any Alabama team has ever had, because that's the world we live in. You just don't have to have an elite defense anymore. I used to brag about the fact that Alabama didn't have to have an elite quarterback, a superstar quarterback, the way people have been insisting for decades now, and they didn't, but I do believe that the game has finally caught up with what some of those guys have been saying for years now, which is, if you're going to win a national title, I think you just about have to have a superstar quarterback now. And we got 2 of them in this ballgame, 2 superstars. Everybody's saying they're the number 1 and 2 Heisman Trophy favorites going into this week, and that this game will determine our Heisman favorite going ahead from now on. And I don't disagree with that at all. I think that Matt Corral and Bryce Young are both the best looking young quarterbacks that we have in college football right now. I believe that this game is going to be very similar to last season. I believe that the only difference really will be the timing of the game, the point in the game when Alabama gains control, because they didn't gain control of that ball game until the very end of the fourth quarter last year. And I think that was one of the reasons that made us all so panicky and made us think that Alabama might be a little bit vulnerable coming out of that one. But this year will be not too much different. I think that the first half is going to be a complete firefight, total shootout, just like it was last year. And I believe that the halftime score is going to be 28-28, tied up. But the third quarter is going to show the difference in this ball game, and it's going to be when Alabama takes control. And the difference is going to be Alabama just has better talent on their defense and their O-line than Ole Miss does. I'm sorry, Lane Kiffin just hasn't had enough time to get Ole Miss's talent in those spots to where they'll be able to pull off a monumental upset against, in my opinion, still the best team in college football, Alabama Crimson Tide. But I believe that coming into that third quarter, you're going to see the talent level kind of take control a little bit, and I believe Alabama's defense will hold Ole Miss's offense to a big goose egg in the third quarter. I think that Alabama's offense is going to take control with their running game, maybe possibly better than we've seen all season. And that'll be the difference in the game. And while Ole Miss is not scoring any points, Alabama will be scoring 10. They'll put a field goal and a touchdown up to make it 38-28 going into the fourth quarter. And then the firefight will resume, but by then it'll be too little too late for the Ole Miss Rebels. Both teams will score 14 points in the fourth quarter, and we'll wind up with a 52-42 Alabama victory. An even more narrow victory than last year in terms of points scored, but I think because of the fact that everyone will feel like they had control the entire second half of the ball game, it won't seem like anything to panic over. And also the fact that we have gotten through, will have had at that point gotten through Florida and Ole Miss. You know, what's to panic about really, because looking at that schedule that Alabama has going into this season, I mean, those were by far and away the two biggest threats that I saw on there. Now, you know, as things move forward, teams might announce their presence in ways that we didn't think that they were capable of. That's always the possibility. I'm looking at you, Arkansas. I'm looking at you, Auburn. But that's the way I think it's going to go down in Tuscaloosa this Saturday. Now, moving on to my national upset pick, which I've really been enjoying doing, and I've enjoyed picking on Oklahoma, and it looks like that the pollsters are picking on them a little bit too, so that's why they've dumped them out of that number 4 spot. I believe that the number 4 spot is going to be thought of as a curse going forward in this season. And who is in the cursed spot this week? It is the Penn State Nittany Lions, who of course have that impressive victory over Auburn. But they're playing Indiana, and I believe that Indiana's funeral might have been celebrated a little bit too early this season, and look for them to pull off a very big upset against the Nittany Lions of Penn State. And the revolving door that is the number 4 spot is going to continue. Now, moving on to the conference, you know, I think that the game of the week nationally is Ole Miss, Alabama, but game day is in Athens this week for the Arkansas-Georgia game, which means that's the game that they believe is the game of the week. And they've got an argument, but I feel like I win the argument because Alabama-Ole Miss is a divisional matchup, and whoever loses that game loses their controlling their own destiny, like we like to talk about. And therefore, that makes that game a lot more significant and a lot bigger because there's more at stake. Whoever loses Arkansas-Georgia, everything they want is still right in front of them. All they have to do is go out there and get it, and because they're from different divisions. So, you know, we all know how that works. But going into this game, Arkansas, Sam Pittman, they have just had a complete dream season so far. They're a Cinderella team in the SEC. But unfortunately, October is a month where Cinderella teams go to die in the SEC a lot, and I think that this is where the glory ends, at least, you know, for the time being, at the end of Saturday, because I just don't think. I think Arkansas is in the same boat that Ole Miss is with Lane Kiffin. It's year 2 for Sam Pittman as well, and I just don't think that they've had enough time, and he's had enough recruiting chances to stock his cupboard full enough as he would need it to be to pull off this kind of an upset against a very good Georgia team. I'm not ready to call them elite yet because, as everyone knows, I am skeptical about the power of their offense. And this week, if they can score 30 points or more over this Arkansas team, then I will no longer doubt them. I will say that they are an elite team and, you know, 1B, like a lot of people are putting them in the country, you know, just slightly a little bit below Alabama. And a lot of people have them basically tied with Alabama in their perception. And I'll go ahead and do that too if they can score more than 30 points against Arkansas. Obviously, I believe Georgia's defense is elite. I think that they're the best defense in America right now. And that's why Arkansas will only be able to score 14 points against them. But I don't believe that Georgia's offense will be able to score 30 or more. And I think that it's going to be a 24-14. Bit of a struggle for Georgia. Maybe they'll start to get a little bit of the doubt that I feel like they deserve, because the Clemson win just isn't anything anymore. It's nothing, and they shouldn't be able to keep riding on that one. But if they can go in there and just hammer down Arkansas in a blowout, easy victory, then it's safe to say they're elite, and we can go ahead and put them up on that top shelf like everybody else has. But it's going to take seeing that for me to do that. Now, moving on, we've got Troy, South Carolina. I'm not going to pick scores for any more of these SEC games playing mid-major teams because unless, of course, it's Alabama, or unless I just find it very interesting. I do find this game interesting because I think Troy's going to win, but I'm still not going to pick a score. South Carolina is very weak this year, and first-year coach and everything, and Troy just kind of has a habit of winning games like this every so often, and I feel like they'll be able to pull that one out, or at least I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Moving on, we've got Florida, Kentucky, which is a very interesting game every year because Kentucky is such an interesting team. They just seem like they're right on the cusp always of making their presence known in this conference. But I do believe that this year Florida's too strong for them to pull off that kind of an upset. Too much talent all over that team. Definitely too strong on offense. And I think that this is going to be one of those mirror scores, 41-14, Florida over Kentucky in this one. Moving ahead, we're going to go to Mississippi State and Texas A&M. Mississippi State has been a disappointment to me this year so far. I really thought that they would beat LSU. But I knew that they would be shaky and hard to predict and up and down, and I knew that they would probably lose games that they shouldn't and win games that they shouldn't. And Texas A&M has been a flat-out disappointment. They don't look like they're very good at anything in football. Not passing, not running, not defense, not special teams. They just have looked very bland and very underwhelming this season, and I think that trend is going to continue for them. I think they are consistently underwhelming, and I think that Mississippi State is going to be a little bit more inconsistent in that regard, and I think this is going to be one of those games that people feel as though they should not win, but they will, because Texas A&M, Jimbo, I feel like he's run his course, and you can expect more mediocrity coming out of College Station from at least for the rest of this season. Moving on, we've got UConn Vandy. This is another one that I'm not going to pick a score. But, I mean, can Vandy beat UConn? They can beat Colorado State, so who knows? But I'm going to pick a UConn victory because Vanderbilt is so bad, and we all know that. And the last game on here is probably the most interesting game in the entire league because it's the Gorilla, and it is, well, I'm not going to say it's the most interesting game because we have so many other good ones, but it's definitely a very interesting game because you got the Gorilla and Ogeron, who's just reeling. They look like a lost puppy that can't find their way home. And Auburn looked to me to be definitely on the road to being a dark horse in the SEC West. I didn't change my opinion after the Penn State game, but I did change my opinion after that Georgia State because that was a big-time struggle. And even if they had still struggled to beat Georgia State, I probably would have changed my opinion so much if we didn't have these quarterback questions. That's a killer. That's a real nightmare. I thought that they had their for sure starter in Bo Nix, but I can't blame Harsin for bringing in TJ Finley last week, and nobody else can, and you certainly can retroactively, or in retrospect, because obviously it worked, and they needed a change in that game, and TJ Finley brought in something that they needed, obviously, and they were able to pull out that victory. Now, this is a case of a team, we know what LSU is. They're just a struggling, meandering, lost football team, lost program with a clueless coach. We don't really know what Auburn is yet, but since we do have a pretty good feel of what LSU is, I'm going to go ahead and pick Auburn to win this ball game, and I think they're going to win it in a close one, but not that close. Certainly not as close as, the Corn Dogs would like, but it's going to be a 28-20 victory for Auburn over LSU, and then the LSU spiral downward into the pit of despair will begin in earnest. And that's going to be it for this week's picks, and we will see going into next week what happens. Thank you so much.